Hi, and welcome back to Friends, Loves, and Life. I'm David Begor. Before we get into the show, I just wanted to talk about what I did this weekend. My husband and I, we went to the Cheech. It is a Chicano art museum in Riverside. It's on Mission Avenue, Mission Inn Avenue, near the Mission Inn in downtown Riverside. And I have to tell you, I was blown away. I was blown away. It was it was it was very cool. It's not a huge space. It's easily manageable to walk through, but the art was incredible. This is his collection. He has collected all this art through the years. If you are in Riverside or in Palm Springs and want to take a day trip to Riverside, which is only really an hour away, so it's not really a day, but go check it out. You will be really surprised. And I'm just going to read here some of the artists that are there. They're photographs, drawings, sculptures by artists including Patsy Valdez, Sandy Rodriguez, Carlos Alvarez, Frank Romero, and Gilbert, I can't pronounce this, Magululagen. I'm sorry. You can read more about this on riversideartmuseum.org. Visit the Cheech. You got to check it out. If you're in the area, you got to check it out. It's very, very cool. The whole upstairs is dedicated to Amelia Mesa Baines, and it's just, I don't know. I was just so blown away that I can't stop thinking about it. And I'm really disappointed in myself for not understanding more of the history of the Chicano life, to understand these collections even more. It's beautiful. So if you get a chance, you should check it out. On today's episode, I sit down with James Lindquist, a deeply compassionate, wickedly funny, and unapologetically honest community leader. James is the director of development at our LGBTQ Center here in the desert, here in Palm Springs. And he is someone who has turned life's hardest experiences, addiction, HIV, stigma, and rejection into purpose, empathy, and action. James is incredible. You know, he grew up in a group home, and he's now, through a series of ups and downs and ins and outs, he is now helping thousands through food access, behavioral health, and connection here in Palm Springs in the Coachella Valley. James's story is one of resilience, service, and never losing the will to be real. We talk about sobriety, marriage, chosen family, and what it means to be gay in today's political climate. We talk about finding joy, finding it at the gym and in community, and in small moments that remind us that we're not alone. The conversation is powerful, and it is a reminder that we don't have to be perfect to be of service. We just have to be present. Here is my conversation with my friend, James Lindquist. Hi, James Lindquist.
Hi, David.
Welcome to my new show.
I love your new show.
Thank you. I wanted to start out just a little bit about how we know each other. From the gym, I think we met before. We talked about that once, but we're not 100% sure. I don't think either one of us can actually remember the full details.
No, I can't remember if it was on Facebook or some sort of a post or a hello. Like how you see it's like people you should know, and I think maybe you came up as somebody I should know, and so it just popped up that way, and then just started seeing you at the gym.
And we both lived in Portland around the same time.
Yeah. So I was there 2001 to 2016.
Yeah, we left in 2014.
Okay, so it could have been even then, and just in. Because Portland is a small little big city.
You didn't grow up in Portland, correct?
I grew up in Chicago.
Chicago, that's right.
Chicago. And then I kind of did the route Chicago to Miller Beach, Indiana, back to Chicago to Royal Oak, Michigan, to Seattle, to Wallingford, to Portland, to here.
Wow.
Yeah, and I wasn't
That
trying to escape anything. I'm not wanted by the law. It was my husband at the time was wanting to move back to Portland because that's where his family was, and so
okay.
we met. I was in Chicago, he was in Miller Beach, and then we kind of just traveled around.
How do you think living in all those different places shaped who you are?
Um, I think, well, I mean, because like when I was in my 20s, I was in Chicago. And I think, as especially growing up gay in the 80s during the AIDS crisis, what was interesting
Mm-hmm.
is that I didn't really know it was happening. I just knew that I had friends that were disappearing. And then going into Miller Beach and especially to Royal Oak, that's when I think I started becoming more of an adult or having to adult. And then Seattle was just a whole nother world. And just, I've always done, I kind of like did job to job. I have a degree in hotel restaurant management, so I did a lot of type of work in that. And, when I lived in Seattle is when I got into corporate. I started working for Amazon, and then moved down to Portland to work for an ad agency. And I think that it was like each place I became more of uh, I think it was like trying to figure out who I was. And it really
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until Portland and certain things happened in my life that it became more um, uh, into this career and into what I'm doing now. And really, I think finding what I wanted to do in life or what was important to me.
Well, in Portland, you worked at our house, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where where things changed in my life and gave me more of I feel, a direction in
Mm-hmm.
regards to where my life, I had a couple of choices in life of what was going to happen. And that's when I things occurred and gave me the focus to get into nonprofit and kind of like take a pause and realize what was important.
Mm-hmm. Is that because and are you comfortable talking about this? Because we've talked about it before, but I just want to make sure if you don't want to talk about this, it's totally fine. Your sobriety.
Well, it's the sobriety, but it's also in 2004, I was diagnosed HIV positive, which had
Okay.
occurred because of drug use, alcohol and drug use. I had about 3 years, no, I would say probably almost 10 years of drug use. And it wasn't until my last 2 years that I got more involved with meth and other drugs like that and became kind of reckless with my sex life, which then resulted in becoming HIV positive. And found out in 2004 through a letter because I'd lost my health care that I was positive and had no idea what to do. And so I was fortunate enough to find an agency called Cascade AIDS Project, which got me the health care that I needed and got me back on track. And when I started my original sobriety, and then got me into healthcare. And that's where in 2008, I discovered our house. I'd been working for a catering company as a catering manager, and the owner told me about this position at our house as an events manager. And my first reaction to him was like, "You try to get rid of me?" And he was like, "No, I just think that this would be good for you because I had a difficulty talking about what had occurred, becoming HIV positive, and that I wasn't so bad about the alcohol, drugs. It was the HIV positive." And so when I interviewed there, it was with 6 people that had some connection to the agency, whether people they knew or being there. And it just became like the first place I really felt like I wasn't ashamed of who I was or what had happened in my life, because up to that point I'd blamed myself and just kind of felt dirty and all these other things that happen when we create stigma or think people are creating stigma around us. And when I first really started finding my voice.
That was going to be my question because you were talking about um, how HIV. Well, let me rephrase that. You mentioned that you were much more open about your sobriety and so the HIV. Was that because of you felt a lot of shame about that?
Yeah, I mean, even in 2004, I mean, we want to think of ourselves that, during that time, it was people were open. We had the drugs. There wasn't any stigma. We no longer had to worry about, coming out to somebody and then being shunned. There was still some of that going on. There was still some of the, especially in my group of friends, whether they were drug users or not, who, uh, once I told them I was HIV positive, there was a little distance, and also
Mm.
especially with family members who didn't understand it. And my partner at the time, I mean, luckily, I had a partner who did understand it and was just like, we just take precautions, and this is what we do, and we make sure to take care of your health. But there's still, there's a lot of uncertainty about HIV and AIDS back then. Even now, I think that there's a lot of unknown, and people don't get educated about HIV and what it can do becoming positive. People think you can just take a pill
Mm.
and don't really think about the socioeconomic parts of it in regards to, in order to take a pill, you have to have a job, which means you have to have health insurance, which means you have to be able to take care of yourself. You have to have food, you have to have rent, you have to have
Hmm.
a support group. You have to realize that there are some people still who don't understand that if you are on medication and undetectable and they're on PrEP, there's a very unlikely chance that anything's going to happen. But you have to take care of yourself. You have to make sure that every day you take your pill. You have to make sure you tell your doctor something strange happens. Um, so along that way, yeah, there was still a lot of shame at that point. And I think some of it was probably internalized, just because um, I felt stupid. I'm like, come on, this is
Mm.
2004. How could I become HIV positive? How stupid of me. Um, and so just realizing that, I keep telling people it's like, I have HIV, it doesn't have me. And so I just try to live my life now to the fullest and to the most honest and transparent.
It's interesting because I converted in 2003, so around the same time. I do remember sort of experiencing some of that, but oddly, there was also this, and right or wrong, there was this sense of freedom once I converted. Like, oh, okay, I don't have to think about that anymore.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you do have to think about it.
Oh, totally. Well, and the other part of it was that when it happened to me in 2004, I was working for a cable company as a supervisor, and I was getting sick all the time. And I would go to I'm not going to name the healthcare agency, but I would go and get tested, and they were like, oh, it's got to be, there's something in the water. You must have gotten bacteria in the water. And then they would have me do these oatmeal baths. Or they would go, oh, there's an imbalance in your food. And they would do that. And this went on for about 4 months. And finally, I was like, hey, do you think it could be HIV? And they're like, HIV? Why? What do you? I'm like, well, I'm a gay man having sex with other men. And they're like, well, if you think we should test you. I was like, wait, what? And then it was just
Wow.
like, oh, yeah, sorry.
Do you have? I don't get the sense from you now, knowing you, but even at that time, was there still shame about just being gay?
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it was a little different. You have to remember, I was living in Portland, and Portland's whole thing is about make it queer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but, it was still, it wasn't the, I think that, over the years we've changed. Like, I wasn't holding my partner's hand. During Gay Pride,
Mm.
everything was fine. I think there was some shame because it was still kind of even, and maybe it was in my head as a gay disease,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so there was that. And I think that definitely. I wasn't trying to play straight. I wasn't trying to like work in a straight world. I mean, my job knew that I was gay. I had other gay coworkers. The main CEO was gay, so I wasn't worried
Mm.
about that. Um, I think it's surprisingly enough, I will say I'm more concerned about that now living in this time and age and living in Palm Springs than I was back then.
More concerned about what
Being gay and openly gay,
you're more concerned about that now because of the political environment. Yeah.
political, and just like some of the situations I've come into where people feel that because of how things are now, they can be more, they're more, flamboyant's the wrong word, but they're more, they feel like they have the right to be able to call you faggot, or they have the right to be able to make a snide comment, or to act in certain ways, or to promote hatred in certain ways towards the LGBTQ community.
And is that making you be more cautious out in public?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And surprisingly enough, I felt originally that that would be fine in Palm Springs, but I've experienced it here in Palm Springs a couple times.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned a story. I think it was on Facebook about being called faggot at the
Yeah.
gym, or not at the gym, at the grocery store.
Yeah. I had a guy that walked by and called me faggot, and then I just asked him, I was like, thank you. What gave it away? That was the look I was going for. And then luckily, there was a bunch of people around and heard him and, booed him off, and he left.
Well, I love that you called it out immediately.
I did not know I was going to do that. Actually, it just was like a reaction. And then I was like, oh my God, what the hell did I just do? This guy's going to beat me up. And I
Mm.
still feared, like, after I said that to him, I was like, I have to leave the store. What if he's waiting outside?
Yeah,
Or
this is a thing that I think we're going through now, and I am trying really hard not to allow myself to be intimidated, even though you do feel it. But I think even if you felt like, oh God, what if I run into that guy outside? I still think that you did the right thing by calling it out.
I recently had a situation, oddly enough, by Steel Gym, where there was a guy going by and drove by and yelled faggot out the window. Yeah. So I mean, it's not isolated. I think that people think that just
No.
because we're Palm Springs that we're safe. I think that people are just. I mean, you can go in Palm Springs and there's a bar that has the Trump flag and promotes
Yeah.
that kind of behavior.
I,
So yeah, I just think that it is. Yeah.
I am a little concerned about prides this year because of the amount of, well, just watching the ice raids,
Mhm.
and that people are watching that thinking, okay, I can go out there and be a bully, cruel, with no consequences.
Well, and I think that's what's so great about our city. I have to give my hats off to our police department, and especially Chief Andy Mills. A couple months ago, we had gay LGBT days in Cathedral City, and there was definitely a presence of the police department there. And he has made it very clear that he will not accept any of that kind of behavior. And just seeing his support for the community, showing up at the bars, showing up at town halls, showing up and just really, also just representing in his own workforce, supporting the LGBTQ community. I think that it is still something we have to be aware of, and luckily they constantly talk about this and they let us know, especially as the community center,
Mm-hmm.
if we're hearing anything. And so I think for us, it is actually more. We have East Coachella Valley Pride that is happening in a couple of months, and I think that's more where we have the concern.
Mm-hmm.
Is especially as that gets more um, heated.
Is that what drew you to working with the center?
It did. I originally, when I was in Portland, because of my HIV work, I said one day I am going to be the director of development at DAP Health, which was at that time was DAP. When it was called Desert AIDS Project, sorry. And when I moved here originally in 2016, I was like told, "Oh, you're crazy. Nobody ever leaves those jobs." And so I was working as a director for a couple other things. And in 2019, I was approached to do it. And so I became director right during COVID, which was a great time to become director. And I was very fortunate to do it for 4 years. And at the end of 2023, the position here had become open as the director of development, and I had applied for it before a long time ago in 2018, 2019. And for me, I love the work that DAP Health does. I think it's very important, especially in the marginalized communities and what
Mm-hmm.
they're doing with children and adults and women. But for me, being a gay, turning 58 years old this year, and also being HIV positive, I felt that I could better support the community that I'm part of. And like I said before, about like having a voice, helping other
Mm-hmm.
people find their voice in the LGBTQ community, especially during a time like what we're facing now, where people are having to worry about, you know, if they're transgender, trying to get the healthcare that they need, or being kicked out of their homes, or
Mm-hmm.
having the issues at schools, or the safe schools not feeling safe anymore because youth are being targeted for being LGBTQ plus, or in our community having gay bashing. Those are all things that I can help get out there and talk about and help support, along with how do we support the seniors in food bank services that are LGBTQ, knowing that 1 in 4 seniors are not getting the food that they need, and especially in the LGBTQ community where we don't have family as we age, a lot of us. And we don't have the friends because as we age, they die off and our network gets
Mm-hmm.
smaller.
I'm sure that's part of a planning process, right? Because a lot of these people are going to need food, shelter,
Yes, our
healthcare.
food bank. We're very unique in our food bank in that, for one, we don't ask you to provide us any kind of record of what you are making or what you have currently in your bank or anything like that. If you tell
Mm-hmm.
us that you are food insecure, we're here for you. You do not have to prove your income. You do not have to worry about feeling ashamed. We know that from all walks of life that, things happen. I
Mm-hmm.
was, in 2004, I was food insecure. I had to rely on getting food from other agencies. It's not always, it doesn't always feel good, but we try to make people feel as good as possible about it because we realize that I'd rather make sure somebody is able to pay for their rent or their medications or whatever
Mm-hmm.
than to worry about eating food, especially if they have kids or if they have pets. So what we are doing is that, especially for our seniors who are having to deal with cuts, either it be through Medi-Cal or Social Security or whatever it can be,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we are there for them with the food. And then also we do have our resources on our website of other agencies that may be able to provide services to them. We know as a community center that we don't want to be the one that's doing all these things when there are other agencies that are able to provide either rental assistance or electrical assistance or whatever else those assistances can be.
Mm-hmm.
We do know, though, that in the LGBTQ community, there is still some stigma or shame about getting food or mental health services, which is why we do have our own food bank, which helps serve not only the LGBTQ community, but our straight allies, and then our behavioral health, which does focus on the LGBTQ plus community, just because we know those are two areas, especially where we've heard from our community that they want to see there's more of a targeted approach.
What does it mean for you personally, though, to be so involved with the community?
I love it. I love when I can see the sparkle in someone's eye that gets what we do. I
Mm.
originally, when I heard about the community, when I heard about the center, I thought this was just a place where old people go to play pinochle and bridge, and they learn Spanish or they learn ASL. And
Right. Yeah.
until I started here, I didn't really realize the breadth and the um, uh, just the amount of stuff that we do. I mean, people don't realize with the food bank alone, last year we had 26,000 individuals that received food. Each week we see people that are continuing to come up that need food services, anywhere from 10 to 20 new individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Last week we served over 370 cars, which could be anywhere from about 800 to 1,200 individuals based on, each car has about 1 to 3 families. We have, like I said, our behavioral health services. We have the services in Coachella that work with youth and families. And they work with the Spanish Latino community, and we have people that are part of that community so that
Mm-hmm.
we're not the white guys that are trying to provide you services or act like we understand where you're coming from. We're trying to be very culturally sensitive. And so just to see an agency that doesn't just say we promote diversity, we promote respect, we promote connecting with each other and cultural differences. Part of our thing is that we want to make sure that we create community and connections and meaningful connections, and that we meet you where you are. And another thing we always talk about is that we don't just provide you with what you need, but we find out what do you really need. And so to be in that position where I don't do this because I want to be seen as James from the center or needing any kind of
Like recognition, some like
recognition. I do it.
validation.
Yeah, I do it because I know growing up and some of the situations I've been in, what it can be like to be food insecure. I know what it's
Yeah.
like to not have somebody you can talk to, or feeling alone, or feeling isolated, or feeling like, suicide might be the best thing to do because you don't have that connection to somebody else and you don't see where you can go in life. To have a 12-step program where I can talk about my feelings and having a shitty day, but knowing that, I don't need to use alcohol or drugs. To see the number of people that come through our doors every single day, week after week, and to see people that come in who maybe, start and they're very shy and intimidated, and then to see them weeks later and talk about how being here helps save their life. I mean, to
Mm-hmm.
have somebody say that to you. Um,
When we first moved here to Palm Springs, I didn't hear much about the center. In other cities, like in Los Angeles, it's massive. In San Francisco, it's like right there on Market Street. Um, Here, it just seems like it takes a much more subtle approach to its presence.
so I agree with you, but I also want to say that, in the last year and a half, our presence in the community has gotten more seen, and we've been more targeted in regards to how we reach out to the community and what we do. When we originally started years ago, it was very grassroots. I mean, especially even when Mike Thompson, who was our CEO, was back here in 2014, we had maybe like 4 or 5 staff to start with, and these different positions. Before I started, we never had a director of development.
Okay.
So I'm the first director of development. We are getting a marketing communications director. We now have directors that are in specialties to help with either like women's services or senior services, or with our trans and gender expansive services.
Right
So
on.
as we're getting these directors who are able to focus on those specialties, we are getting more and more out there. And we are being, like I said, we're being very targeted in how we do that, because we
Mm-hmm.
know that if you throw a wide net, that doesn't always mean you're going to get to reach the people that actually need the services.
Mm,
So we're trying to be like,
yeah.
we just did a thing with HRC that talked about, how people are feeling right now during these times and the best things that we can do. We work with the Trans Health and Wellness Center in regards to getting the word out there, like how do we connect with each other, and how to work together. Our food bank services, we're being very, reaching out to the community and letting the community know that we're there, especially our seniors. And I think that as the word is getting out, we're seeing more and more people that are connecting. And people like you, David, are a perfect example of ambassadors of ours. I can only reach so many people. I can only talk to so many people. And
Mm-hmm.
your network of people and who you're able to connect with is going to be different than mine. We may have some crossover, but
Sure.
there's also going to be a lot of people that I don't know or I don't connect with.
Well, I think that get as I've gotten to know you, I think that the work that you do and the work that I now hear about that the center does, I think is really important. So I will do whatever I can to spread the word because I think it's
And I agree with you. I still think that there's a lot of people that don't know about the center. And I think part of that too, David, is that we a lot of times don't think about an organization unless we need the services.
right,
So I didn't need to learn pinochle or bridge. I didn't need Spanish.
right.
So it's like, we always kind of think about like, what are the needs that we have? And what I tell people is that you may not need these services, but you may know someone who does. And so if you can come and take a tour and learn about everything we do, then we send you on your way as an ambassador and you have a better understanding of what we do. And that's what happens every time I take somebody for a tour and I show them these two little floors and I talk about everything that we do and then point out what we do in Coachella and here. Every person tells me, I didn't know what all you did.
Mm-hmm. What about from I don't want to get into a deep conversation about politics, but what about the political divide? And is there a, gosh, how do I phrase this? Is there a can you draw in Republicans to have conversations with them? I guess that's the most blunt way to put it.
I always welcomed. We are always open to having conversations and opening the door to have those conversations. If that is appropriate and that it is to help support the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has a different opinion or wants to have our doors are always open. I've had conversations with people that haven't been the most comfortable. And are hopefully helping people learn about what we do. I think we're very fortunate in that we haven't had a lot of pushback in the community about
Mm-hmm.
the work that we do. But we are always open to if somebody, and I'm not going to just say necessarily from the Republican Party because I think there's a lot of people who are Republican that support the work that we do.
Yeah.
That get what we do and probably have some sort of connection to the LGBTQ plus community, whether it's, I know gay Republicans, or whether it's family members of that. I think it's more of the people that really don't understand some of the intricacies of the life that we have, or maybe they have some misunderstandings.
Mm.
So we're always open to have those conversations.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my friend Brian this morning at the gym, and we were talking about this show, and he said, "Are you going to have Republicans on to talk to them?" And I said, I've been thinking about that, and I think it's important. I'm watching Pete Buttigieg and the work that he does to educate people and to talk to people across the aisle, and I think I don't know if I'm there yet,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I
another
see the importance of it.
Yeah, and I think another thing I just want to let you know is that we also recognize that in our community that there is a lot of anxiety right now in
Yeah.
regards to what's happening. And we do have a support group. It's called the Election Anxiety Support Group that meets here. And they're able to have that safe space to talk to other people about their angst and what they're feeling. And we started doing it before the election. And then we saw a huge uptick, especially right after the election. And we had like the first week, I think we had 4 or 5 of these just to allow people to have that safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have it. And we still allow people to come in and, it's not as big as it used to be, but, we still do have a lot of people. And especially when we don't know what's happening day to day.
Right. Yes. Yes. Okay. So let's move on from the political.
Political
Yeah. Um, can you share with me a moment, either work or personal life, that sort of cracked you open emotionally and in a way that changed the way that you see the world? And, like, for example, how HIV basically changed your direction, or becoming sober changed the direction of your life.
I think both of those together. I grew up in a group home and from age 7 to 16.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. At a very young age, my parents had to give up their rights to us. And so I do have siblings that got adopted, and I grew up in a group home. And I had a therapist that from 7 to 16. And one of the things that she told me was that in life we have two choices. You basically, if something happens to you, you can tell other people, and they will feel sad for you for a period of time, and that will be okay. But then they're going to get bored and move on. Or you can take the experience that has happened and say, this happened to me, and so this is what I'm going to do to make sure that I've learned that I can do something from it that is for good. And
Mm-hmm.
I would actually say that was the wake up call when I became HIV positive. I was in a very destructive lifestyle. It was, and what was surprising is that I thought that was normal during that time. I mean, I thought it was normal that people got together on a Friday night and didn't get out of the house until Monday morning, and stayed up for 3 days, because that was the lifestyle I had and people I was hanging around. Originally it was the telling the story of, I became HIV positive and feel sorry for me. And then, Bev Thompson was the therapist that I had, but her voice came into my head and said, you have two choices right now. You can either, keep telling people your sad story and they're going to feel sad for you. You can do something with it. And that
Yeah.
was my God shot almost. That, if I hadn't become HIV positive, I don't know where my life would have been. I don't know if I'd still be alive.
Yeah, I think about that too, because I went through a period very similar to in the late 90s, early 2000s, very self-destructive, um, looking for love in all the wrong places, expecting people who were also self-destructive to be just as available and um, wanting to settle down for a lifetime of love.
Right.
That just didn't work. But it was becoming HIV positive that sort of started me on that journey to figuring out what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I honestly feel that if I had not become HIV positive, I don't think I would have had the opportunities in life that I have had to meet people and to, one,
Yeah.
have an impact on their lives,
Yeah.
uh, but also meet people who have impacted mine and who have just made me the man I am today. Um, I think that was my wake up call to, do something that, I was in my
Mm-hmm.
30s at the time. It's like, I'm not getting any younger. So really make something with your life. And I think, that's what got me into the nonprofit world. And, like I said, when I started, I did not have a voice. I was very much into the profit world where you would tell me what you want and I would tell you how much it cost. I didn't know how to ask somebody for money or to get them to support
Mm.
things, talk about legacy or anything like that. And now, I don't think you don't grow up saying, I want to work in the nonprofit world. Because,
Right.
you know,
That's probably true. Yeah.
yeah, you don't make a lot of money in nonprofit. And it's a long hours and it's a lot of work, but I've gotten to meet some amazing people. I've been to amazing homes. I've been, met people that I don't think I would have otherwise met. I've been able to have conversations with people
Mm-hmm.
that, may not have occurred. Um, and I get to be, like I said, be in this agency where I get to see all sorts of people, and I get to see them in all areas of their life. Some of them who I can see as myself when I was younger, and be like, I see
Mm.
you, and I know what's happening,
Yeah.
and I know you're going to be okay. And just yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember? I think it was late 90s, the It Gets Better
Mm-hmm.
project. It doesn't seem like there's something like that around anymore. And I wonder about young people today where there's so much anger coming at them. And, even the trans community, young trans people, young gay people, young queer people, what do they have to look forward to?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so proud of you for like standing up to that person in the grocery store, because young people need to hear this and see this from older people like us being brave and saying, no, you cannot treat me this way.
Part of that is, unfortunately, with our school systems. I mean, you and I grew up at a time when, you know, you you got together with your friends and you were outside until the lights came on the lamps.
Yeah.
And if you fell, they gave you a Band-Aid and you went back outside. And there
Yeah.
was, YouTube and social media and, all these other kinds of things. And in school, we had sex education, we had, all these other kinds of things. And nowadays, I mean, that's not allowed. And I think that it's kind of sad because, we do have the GSAs in the schools, for those that have them. But I think that I agree with you. I think that we've gotten away from being able to support our youth and finding ways to support them. And so you have these pockets and you have these areas where you're seeing that people are able to find each other. But like
Mm-hmm.
for a kid who is in Texas or in Florida who is feeling isolated, I mean, that's got to be hard, especially when you hear things like Trump trying to defund the Trevor Project,
Mm-hmm.
which is a number that kids who are in crisis can call. And he's, defunding the trans programs and the LGBTQ plus programs in schools, so kids don't feel that support anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because now you're going to go online, and I mean, you and I both know you go online and you don't know what to trust.
Yeah, I think that's why I find it so frustrating, because like you said, you and I grew up in a time where we had sex education and all that, but you and I also didn't have gay role models in the public.
No.
And a lot of kids have now grown up with seeing gay people on TV, seeing them, I think my first exposure to a happy, fun, secure gay person was Jack on Will and Grace. That was only in the late 90s,
Yeah.
early 2000s. So it hasn't been that long. As awful as things are, I just don't want to lose the momentum that we've gained in getting positive role models out there for young people to see.
Well, and that's what I love about. I will have to say that that's the flip side of what I love about social media, is because I do find that for me, especially I can find some videos on Instagram, and there are a couple of activists that I follow. And I think that that's important right now, is that for us to find those people that we resonate with or that make us feel good about ourselves and try to connect in some way, whether it is like for me, the Instagram, or finding other people out there that are like friends, like, you and I, or finding other mentors. I think it's especially right now so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I just look, it gets better is still active, the website, and they still do stuff. So hopefully we still have our youth reaching out to them and doing things.
I just saw the statistic that divorce rates among gay men are the lowest among the groups of like straight couples, lesbian couples, and gay men. Gay
Wow.
men have the lowest divorce rate, which I think is kind of amazing. What has being married taught you about love and commitment and vulnerability?
Overall, I think it's the idea that I was told I would never have a time when I could get married.
Same.
I was
Yeah.
told that this would never, it was kind of like growing up and saying, as kids, like, well, you might as well just change because you're never going to get married. You're going to die alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in your lifetime, we're not there. It won't happen for hundreds of years. And so I think being able to get married now is, and I understand there are some people that will never get married, don't think it's important, all this other kind of stuff. But I think being that gay young kid who was told that it would never happen to have that opportunity. I mean, it's been amazing because finding somebody that you really care about and that you relate with and that you
Mm-hmm.
want to have in your life. Um, it's just been even having that request from somebody to say, marry me. I mean, you and I grew up too when we were calling each other like our partner, our boyfriend, our husband,
Yeah.
and you would say husband, but it never meant anything. And now when you say husband, it's like, oh no, it's husband. Um,
Yeah.
I think that, with my husband, we're very open and honest with each other. He is somebody that I can be honest with and talk about things. And, one of the things that we allow is that you may not always have a conversation that's comfortable.
Mm.
But as long as it's done out of emotional fidelity and it's done out of respect for each other, you can get through anything. And I mean, he always tells me too, no matter
Mm.
what, we'll always survive our feelings. So it's just been nice
Yeah.
to have that freedom to talk about things. And I think that, especially in the gay community where we are, I think, more sexually fluid than a lot of communities, it's been nice to have that opportunity. But I think in our gay community, we've also kind of figured out marriage in our way,
Yeah.
and our spin on it to where it is ours.
Yeah. It is one of the things I love about gay people, or actually just queer people in general, is this. And we were sort of forced into it, but it is this like we carve our own path in how we exist in the world.
Mhm.
And I think that is really beautiful. And I see that influences other people to be a little freer in their lives as well. Um, can I ask, are you and your husband in a monogamous relationship?
No,
You're not.
no.
And is that something that you talk about?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's how we met originally, and so I think it was very important when we decided to have that conversation and to just be open and honest about it. It's one of those things where I think that the whole idea of monogamy was brought on in a time to try to like get families together and try to do all this stuff with the church and all that. We were not
Mm-hmm.
originally brought up with monogamy as a community, as a culture. And I think that, like I said, as far as the gay community, we've created our own because I know a number of couples who are married but have an open relationship,
Mm-hmm.
or they're married and one of them has a boyfriend, or both have a boyfriend, or whatever they want to do. It is their choice. It is
Mm-hmm.
but as long as they're being honest and open with each other, that's what I hope for. But I think that it doesn't take away from what that means or what that commitment to each other is.
You seem like a really empathetic person. How does that help you connect with the community, with other people, or just friends in general?
I think it's just because people can tell that I'm honest and that
Yeah, you do come across that way.
I don't and kind of in my position, it's kind of funny because it's like I will have I always tell donors, I'm like, to me, a donor giving, $100 means just as much as them giving us $100,000 because that is what is important to
Hmm.
them, what is meaningful or what they can do. I mean, do we want the $100,000?
Sure.
Sure. But if it is meaning for you to do 100, and I think that kind of then also goes into because of how I grew up, the situation with my childhood, growing up in the group home,
Hmm.
eventually with drug use, all this other kind of stuff. I think that's kind of made me to who I am, and I'm very humble. I don't, I feel very lucky to where I am today. I have my husband, I have my house, I have 4 dogs. I live very comfortably, but I also know that can be taken away at any moment. I don't take for granted anything in my life.
Well, and you see people at their most vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important to be able to relate to somebody and say, "I see you," and especially in a
Yes.
community where we look at homeless people and we go, oh my God, what a how awful. We don't even go like how awful for them. We're like, oh, I can't talk to that person. I can't give them money. They're going to just buy drugs. Oh, look at, I always think I'm like, there, but for the grace of God go I,
Yeah.
because
And we all want to be seen, right? Even the homeless person wants to just be acknowledged
right,
with a simple hi. And
yeah.
yes, they may take that as like, oh, you want to talk to me, whatever. But, taking a few moments to just let someone know that they are there and you see them doesn't take anything away from you.
No, and I think that's also, I mean, and I don't know about you, but I, I think we really have to be careful about it because, in the gay community, as we age, not so much in Palm Springs, but when you and I were both in Portland and other areas, as gay men age, we become invisible. And so
Yes.
imagine
Yeah.
as a community becoming invisible and then really becoming invisible. I mean, imagine what it's like when we're aging as gay men, and we're not as desired anymore as much as we used to be. We're
Mm-hmm.
not asked to the pool parties. We're not, part of the in crowd. So imagine now that 10 times. You don't have a house, you don't have food, you don't have connections of people, you don't have, and so yeah,
I was talking with Ted Geis yesterday about he has a lot of older clients
yeah,
and how as we age, we become more isolated and we don't get out of the house as much. And the gym becomes a place that you can go, which is one of the reasons I love this gym that we go to, is because it just feels like a great place to go meet people, socialize, especially when you're aging.
yeah, yeah. And I originally did not want to go to Steel because I'd heard like it's the gay gym, and I'm like, I just want to work out. I just want to have my workout. And so when I first started going, I have a workout buddy, Robert, and started in 2019. I went in there with the perception it was just going to be like, don't talk to me. I'm just here to work out. All this other kind of stuff. It's just a cruisy place, all that. And it's
Yeah,
actually, yes, they're people who are gay men. We're going to cruise each other.
sure.
Um, but a lot of it is like people get excited to see each other. There's
Yeah.
hugs. How are you doing? There's conversations about real life. I was in the
Mm-hmm.
locker room the other day, and somebody was talking about like they were having certain types of surgery that were happening, and that they were scared about it. And
Mm-hmm.
there was another person that talked about recently his partner had passed and what his life had changed. So I think it's nice to have that opportunity, as gay men, to have a space where we can connect with one another, and it's not just a sexual space.
Yeah.
And support each other based on like we're all there to work out. We all know that we're trying to look good, but
Yeah.
there's this as well, and we give each other shit.
Yes, we do. That's okay.
It's like,
That's
girl,
okay.
did you see what she was wearing?
Well, there's a lot of that. If you could speak to the younger James, the James who grew up in the group home, or who's just coming out, were you out when you were in your group home?
Yes.
What would you want him to know about what's coming, what's waiting for him?
I think mostly I would just say that I want him to know that he is going to find his tribe. That he, growing up that point, I didn't have parents. I was growing up in a community where everybody had parents, and I went to school and I was the kid made fun of because I didn't
Mm,
have parents. And even growing up in a high school when I got to a foster home to explain I had, foster parents, to know that it sucks right now, but, and I hate to quote the website, but, it does get better. And I wish I would have been my authentic self sooner and not afraid
mm.
to be that.
Yeah, same. I wish I had been my authentic self at a
Yeah, and
much
I wish
younger
that
age.
I would have felt comfortable reaching out to people and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, I don't get this. I need help. I need to find somebody to connect to," because I took that as actually being less than and being insecure, and
Mm.
that's like a fault, as if there was a character defect to myself.
Yeah, I took it as like I'm already supposed to know this.
Right.
And so I wouldn't talk to people about it because I felt like, well, I'm supposed to know.
Right. Exactly.
And yeah. What are you reading or watching now that's bringing you joy?
Oh, scarily, I'm watching The Handmaid's Tale, which is like it's
I
weird.
couldn't.
Oh my god, it's so
I
good.
couldn't.
But to think of that book was written 40 years ago, and to see it kind of being actualized.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember the book right now, but my friend David turned me onto this book that is a daily kind of quote book. And it gives you daily quotes about like, today, just know that you are all that you need. There's just like, it's a daily like self-help book.
Hmm.
And I can't think of the title of it right now, but it's like a page or stuff like that. Um,
Cool.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you, James.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been great.
I appreciate you spending the time with me.
Now I want to know the name of the book. Damn it.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Friends, Loves, and Life. I want to thank James for being so open and honest with his journey. James is a living reminder that we all have the power to create connection, dignity, and change just by being who we are. It allows other people to connect with us in a much more authentic way. If this episode moved you, please leave me a review where you listen to this podcast and send me a note on Substack or Blue Sky at David Begor. If you want to learn more about James's work and what he is doing, visit the LGBTQ Community Center of the Desert at thecentercv.org. I'll also put that link in the show notes. Remember, be bold, be free, be you. I'm David Begor, and this has been Friends, Loves, and Life.